on I will release the Epstein files on day one, and has done everything possible, including hauling Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room for a closed door muscle session. This is just a despicable act of betraying the victims of Epstein. It's long past time that we get transparency around this for the American people.
That's the scenario that floated to me this weekend too, that they're going to claim this is not an active investigation and therefore they can't release anything, at least not now. But have you had any conversations with your Republican colleagues? We've seen the dam was going to break in the House.
Yes.
And this is a moment here where some of the GOP finally, at least on this issue, says, hey, we can say no to President Trump. Do you think your Republican colleagues in the Senate would do the same?
Yes. So far in the Senate, we've recently seen them stand up to President Trump on ending the filibuster, on ending something called the blue slip in the Judiciary Committee, which allows Democrats and Republicans to control who gets put on federal courts, district courts from our states, and on appropriations. The bills that are going to come up now this coming week, the Republican majority rejected Trump's budget cuts. For example, in the bill we just passed, cuts to the FDA and SNAP were rejected by the Agriculture Committee. And in the upcoming votes that I am really excited for us to take, they have rejected his cuts to the NIH and CDC in the health and education.
I had a conversation with Katie Britt at the University of Alabama game, of course. And
you had to get that.
Exactly. The senator said that if we can get through the government shutdown, said at the time, she said, what a difference it's going to make when you have one appropriation bill after another going through with Republicans and Democrats doing exactly what you said. After that happens, suddenly rescissions become much harder.
Much harder if you have voted for a bill and the president has signed it. And several of these appropriations bills have provisions that make rescissions even harder. We wouldn't be advancing without some private commitments from Republicans who are appropriators that they're not going to do rescissions on these bills. That's really the only way to restore trust. And Senator Britt's been really constructive in getting us back on track.
Can I ask you a question that unfortunately too many people just don't care about? And I've heard a lot of Democratic operatives say, oh, we shouldn't talk about this. Maybe we should. And that's USAID. And we need to talk about USAID because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Because that's what America does. Even Roger Ailes would always say, America has fed and freed more people than anybody else in the world. Whenever anybody asked him, like, is America great? That fed part comes first.
Yep.
We've taken care of people. And it makes us stronger because of it. But let's just also talk about strategy. It also gives us intel on the ground. It gives us intel whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's Ivory Coast, wherever it is. Those people who get our food with the American flag on it,
medicine,
and get our medicine and get, PEPFAR saving 25 million lives. They're going to talk to us instead of the Chinese. They're going to talk to us instead of the Russians. If we're doing that, I mean, it's just pennies on the dollar. It's one of the best investments we make.
Yes.
Is there any chance?
You're preaching to the choir here.
I'm just curious, though.
This is my guy.
Is there any chance that Republicans will step forward and say, let's get the aid started again? Not only is it the right thing to do, it makes America stronger strategically.
Interestingly, on Newsmax, there was a poll posted yesterday showing that 3/4 of Americans support humanitarian relief and disaster assistance.
Oh.
Good.
So that when Jamaica, for example, gets overrun by a hurricane, we didn't see big response from the United States because most of those people had been laid off and that function has largely been shut down. One of the ways we first got into places like North Korea, Venezuela, Syria, meaning American volunteers and American funding for hunger, was through organizations like UNICEF, like the World Food Program. It gives us moral credibility around the world. It teaches our values, and it connects us to hungry people around the world. Delaware farmers have told me over and over, they're proud of feeding a hungry world, whether it's the McGovern-Dole program or the Food for Peace program. The problem with how DOGE and Elon Musk under Trump tore up USAID was they did it fast, they did it ugly, and they did it in a very destructive way.
Well, and Claire, and even if you're cynical and if you don't care about helping people all over the globe, explain to those people why strategically it's the smartest thing for us to do. It gets us in these countries, and we get intel that will further American interests.
I'll never forget when I was in Pakistan on a Codel, learning about what was going on the ground in Pakistan. And I saw all this building going on. And I go down by one of their big industrial areas. I said, what is that? And they said, oh, that's China. And what's happening right now is China is moving into this vacuum.
Yeah.
As we have withdrawn, China has reached out. China is exponentially stronger now on a world stage than they were 9 months ago because of Elon Musk, Doge, and the decimation of USAID.
So true. We're going to sneak in a quick break. When we come back in just a moment, we'll dive into President Trump's very public split from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been one of the president's most loyal supporters. Plus, CNBC's Andrew Ross Sorkin has insight on how the markets are shaping ahead of the opening bell.
I want to comment on what they just got through talking about. First of all, we stand under the umbrella or under the shield of being a Christian nation, of being a God-fearing, Christ-loving Christian nation. We have done this now for approximately 250 years. At the same time, as being a God-fearing, loving Christ nation, does not mean that we are supposed to give the farm away. This is one of the reasons why Christ said, do not throw your pearls before the swine, so that they can be trampled upon. This is one of the grand integrity ideals that has been misconstrued about the Christianity walk, in thinking that just because we claim to be a born-again Christian means that we're supposed to bow down to any and everything out there in the world. We're not supposed to bow down to any and everything out there in the world, according to the teachings of Christ. And if people don't align in areas that they should align in, then we're supposed to walk away from them. Now, granted, whenever there's a natural catastrophe that hits similar towards the hurricane that hit in Jamaica, there's no doubt we're immediately supposed to respond in a positive way in trying to assist that situation the best that we can. One reason is because that we do claim to be a God-fearing, Christ-loving nation. But the other reason is because what if we get hit by a similar, if not worser type scenario? We would hope and pray that other people from other nations would have a little bit of empathy or sympathy on us to the degree that they would offer help in coming and helping us. This was one of the things, the argument that I had with Tommy Moore up here in Weakley County Courts in Dresden, Tennessee, pertaining to being neighborly. And I think at that time, that actually went through one ear and out the other in correspondence and thinking, with Dennis just saying this. Well, a few years later, whenever a tornado come ripping through parts of this area, and it wound up ripping right down through the middle of Dresden, Tennessee, I just wonder if any of that conversation remotely was thought about during the time whenever Dennis was having to stand in front of Tommy Moore in trying to recognize and represent the dignity of his responsibilities towards being a loyal, born-again Christian pertaining to my neighbors and pertaining to my neighborhood. I just wonder if any of that conversation, because it's supposed to be in public domain, even though I asked for a DVD or a CD that I gave good money for, and then once I got it home, it was printed up in a different type of format, to the degree that I didn't have a computer or no type of advanced technology to be able to read it. Now, if that's not bogus, I don't know what is. At least what went on in Paducah, Kentucky, pertaining in front of a federal judge, At least I asked for a DVD or a CD, and I got it, and it was word for word, verbatim, exactly what it was supposed to be, because that's in public domain. Now, I've never asked for a DVD or a recording of what went on in Trigg County in front of Judge Woodall, but I'm sure one day I probably will. And I hope to God that they're not deceiving or deceptive enough to the degree that they're going to burn off a DVD and then offer it to me, but there's no equipment to be able to read it. Now, wasn't that appropriate? That's kind of like whenever I stood in front of a federal judge in Wheeling, West Virginia, after my attorney, Miss Jolene Nugent, offered to purvey the evidence that was before, that I had a mini cassette tape player that was listening to the exact same conversation that 911 was listening to, but yet no, whenever it come time for them to produce that I had actually made a physical harmful threat towards the President of the United States, which at that time was George Walker H. Bush, they said it was a computer failure, or it must have been a failure with the equipment because it didn't record it. But he knew now. He sat up there and he said he knew that that's what Mr. Jackson said, that he was on his way to Washington, D.C. to be an assassin to take out one of the American presidencies. And what did that judge do? He sided with that witness versus siding with the truth, because the facts did not support the accusation that they was bringing forth. And to this day, I will still state with a good, clear conscience that I never, ever have threatened a United States president or a judge or any type of official. I tell you, whenever it comes to crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, they expect for us to cross all the T's and dot all the I's as far as accountability, but whenever it comes time for the authorities to cross their T's and dot all their I's, they've been bogus. They've been basically scam artists from the get-go, as far as I'm concerned, and they have ruined, literally ruined individuals' lives. Individuals' lives. It's gross. It goes beyond gross negligence. It's intentional malice behavior.
So the beef crisis. I mean, they're just that serious. What is serious though is this: New York Times. You actually have children being left alone without their parents because you have the administration so obsessed on reaching their numbers, and Stephen Miller thinks this is a good idea. Stephen Miller thinks this is a good idea, and Donald Trump lets it happen. Can we zoom in on this picture, please? Donald Trump lets this happen, where children, here's a 2-year-old, are left without their parents because they're trying to meet quotas that we said from the beginning, and we'll say it again. Quotas that will never, ever be met. This is America 2025.
It's that image and that headline why Donald Trump's numbers on immigration are so underwater. This is supposed to be a signature issue. Americans are saying that's too much. Outside, maybe that thrills the hardest core faction of his base.
Yeah.
But we know that the numbers they set out, the millions they want deported, not going to happen. And that though Americans, in 2024 showed this, they want the southern border to be managed better. They want it to be closed. And it is. But this sort of, that seems to some to be the cruelty of some of these deportations, where it's just your neighbors, your friends, your parishioners at church, the guys on your sports team and their kids, that they're the ones being moved out and parents being deported, leaving their children behind. It's a humanitarian moment and as well as a bad point.
I would say it again.
Different word for it.
I could save you a lot of pain and misery in the administration if you just listen to us. You don't have the money to do this. You don't have the ability to even meet Biden's numbers. Why don't you have the ability? Because so many people came over the border during Biden's presidency, and they were right there at the southern border, so they could round up thousands of people in a day and deport them whenever they wanted to do that. So instead, they're going town to town, city to city. They're busting into schools and grabbing teachers. They're busting into carpool lines, grabbing mothers. This is grotesque and
Asking people if they were born here, often detaining citizens in the state.
I mean, how many citizens have been detained here? It was front page of the Chicago Tribune this weekend that you actually had, again, more American citizens being detained. It's really, it's staggering. And Americans want a secure southern border. Mm-hmm. They do not want what they're saying. And we've got David Rode here. David.
There has to be a balance. And there's no doubt there's going to be mistakes made whenever you're going to do a roundup like this. Just like there was mistakes whenever Donald Trump released all those people pertaining to the uprising of January the 6th that I disagreed with, that it should have been looked at and at least given a second opinion about, rather than just up and release everybody of doing a blanket sweep out pertaining to his decision. He's acting not just in gross negligence, but he's acting in the form of beyond carelessness to the point of malice. And that's how other people see this, because there's too much of it going on. There's no doubt they need to take any and everybody that's illegal over here and reprimand them in some form or fashion. They need to reprimand them. But you know who the people that they should reprimand the most is the people that allowed for it to happen. The people that sat back and let this happen. Those should be the people that should be reprimanded the most, because they failed the American people pertaining to safety and security.
Of immigrants? No. Those two don't square up.
There's the ethics of it, and then there's also a genuine national security challenge and danger here. There was a separate Times story this weekend about the Department of Homeland Security being completely transformed and becoming, in essence, the Department of Deportation. And there's been a huge drop in sex trafficking investigations, child exploitation investigations. It's 33% lower so far this year than it has been in past years. The FBI has the same problem. Agents are shifted over to these investigations of immigration cases. So it's a tremendous change, and this is the department that was set up after 9/11 to protect the country.
This is yesterday's New York Times lead story about it.
Yeah.
All of these people that ran around going, oh, sex trafficking, oh, only Donald Trump can stop sex, oh, Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey and all these other people are child predators. They are literally this story shows that they will be getting phone calls from people saying, a hotel owner saying, sex trafficking is happening out of my hotel. And they go, we're sorry. Our agents have been reassigned. They can't help you. There are girls that have been missing because of sexual abuse, and they've said, Mika, they can't help because they're trying to reach a quota they will never reach. So human trafficking, sex trafficking, out the window. Out the window.
So, speaking of trafficking, we're going to get right back to this, because there is, of course, the Christian answer to Trump that we're looking at as well. But the Epstein files are creating a rift between Trump and even his most loyal supporters. We're going to look into that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, what's going on with her. Also, the president has taken a complete 180 on the release of these documents. We're going to talk about why, and also talk about his tariffs. It appears that he's acknowledging that his tariffs are raising prices on everyday items for Americans. Opinion columnist for the New York Times, David French, is with us, and CEO and co-founder of Axios, Jim Vandehei, joins us this morning as well. So, David, continuing the conversation that Joe was having with the other David, you're writing about sort of this response to Trump on all of this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think Joe's exactly right. I think that was a very important moment when the Catholic bishops came out, really with almost one voice. I think the vote was 216-5 to condemn this, this crackdown that, as Joe's been saying, is indiscriminate. It's brutal. It's a masked police force. It's diverting from other parts of the law enforcement apparatus, all to pour into this just campaign of absolute brutality. And it's just not just a campaign of brutality. In some cases, it's extending into actually confronting religious freedom and religious liberty. You've seen priests denied entry to facilities to conduct communion. Down in Texas, you've seen aggressive legal campaigns against Catholic institutions that have been providing food and clothing and shelter to migrants. And so this kind of campaign is not something that the American people signed up for. It is not something that they like when they see. And sadly, because it's empowered by so many evangelical Christians who voted for Trump, this becomes also part of Trump's religious movement, and it requires a religious answer. And that's what we saw from the Catholic bishops, appealing to these scriptural principles about duties of care for all people. And I think that this moment, this line in the sand moment, is very important.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, David, and you know this, you grew up in the church. I know it. I grew up in the church, not the Catholic Church, Protestant church.
And that's the reason why that you've heard me talk about not only political derelict, but also the priesthood derelict, pertaining to the ministers, pertaining to the preachers, pertaining to those that stand in behind the pulpit. Whenever they're not willing to stand up and address the situation properly, then they're not doing their jobs. And if you're not doing your job, then that's derelict. That's derelict of duty, pertaining to what the people assigned you for, towards you ever being able to stand in behind the pulpit to begin with, or stand, pertaining to the political aspect, in behind a bench where you're wearing a robe. Either or, it's still derelict. I made mention before Donald Trump ever even become president, when it come to the illegal immigrants, that there was going to have to come a time to where the American people is going to have to not necessarily put blinders on their eyes, but they was going to have to be readjusted, because it was going to take some down and dirty ethnic moves in trying to take care of this problem that other prior presidential administrations has brought forth upon to the American people. I said then that we're going to see some things that we're not going to like. And the exact words that I said that was going to occur now is occurring. Now is occurring. There's no doubt you're going to make mistakes when it comes to person-to-person mandated events like this. There's no doubt. But at the same time, there should be some sort of a balance in how far is too far. There's no doubt. Sometimes good people has to do bad things when it comes to maintaining any type of order. Regardless whether it's American law and order, regardless whether it's Venezuela law and order, regardless whether it's all them other countries down in South America or Mexico law and order, or even China or other bigger superpower countries. There's no doubt. Where the fault falls upon is to the leadership of whoever is in charge of that country. Just like it goes down the tier regarding, you don't first start reprimanding the church body. You reprimand those who are in control of the church, are in charge of the church body, before you start reprimanding the church body. The reason why the head churchmen are not doing their jobs is because they feel threatened that if they do put it out there on the line pertaining to the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help them God, then they're going to be kicked down the road, and they're going to find somebody else that will tickle their ears. Bottom line.
Look back on the civil rights era when too many preached about the status quo and tried to justify segregation and tried to justify the dehumanizing of black people. It's their choice, and it's time they move. Okay, so this is an extraordinarily important issue, but we haven't gotten to our top story of the day.
Right. We're gonna do that.
We've got the Epstein files. We've got Jim Vandehei. He's talking about the split in the MAGA movement and so much more.
Right. So we're going to get the very latest on the vote to release the Epstein files and also the riff within the MAGA base about that. Morning Joe will be right back.
It's pretty apparent that the Epstein files has turned into a thorn into Donald J. Trump's presidency regarding the whole truth. Whenever you have so many innocent lives being affected, you got to once more go back to the original core of how come this was not handled properly, coming from the DEA, coming from the law enforcement agencies or the judges that was supposed to have handled this properly on the front end, going back probably 10, 12, 15 years ago. How come? I'm going to tell you why. There was too much dirt on too many wealthy, powerful people. And they was persuaded or talked down in saying, well, yes, it's bad, but it ain't that bad. Well, now the American people and the world is seeing, not only is it bad, but it's tremendously bad. Especially whenever you're talking about something that went on for this length of time, with this many people that was going over there taking advantage of these children. These now adults that have been scarred for the rest of their lives, pertaining to what they had to go through and why they was forced upon in going through it. Sex trafficking is still going on right now as I speak. It goes on more so in other countries than it does in this one, but this one is not got a clean slate pertaining to the very evil substances that's going on out there pertaining to abusing people's lives, especially minors, children's lives. It's a disgrace pertaining to what we're seeing unraveling right in front of our very eyes pertaining to the Epstein case, that now those poor victims are having to be victimized again and again and again, almost on a day-to-day basis, every time they see a program like this, and they was part of that group that got victimized during that time. Now they're being psychologically tormented again and again and again. Now, I have to ask this question, which is, what type of people have we become? It brings me back to the conversation that Ronald Reagan had during the time that he was establishing the Atlantic and the Pacific alliances during the late 80s of the time capsule. That whenever we put a time capsule into the ground pertaining to the things that we're presently in reality of, not a distorted reality, but in what we're in reality of right now. Opening up that bottle 100 years from now, those people are going to know everything about us, and we're not going to know nothing about them. Which, draws the fact of how disgusting, how pathetic, how immoral, how cruel, how indifferent, how cold-heartedly are they going to look at us in what that we was a part of, looking back 100 years from now at our existences the same way that we have a tendency towards looking back at our ancestors of what they either done or didn't do 100 years before we come into an existences. When it comes to if the shoe fits, wear it, I think it's pretty obvious pertaining to the Epstein case that it has turned into nothing but a mockery of not only our American laws, but the world's laws in general towards young women having to sell themselves out or be taken advantage of this way in being kidnapped and subdued to this type of evil barbaricness. And that's the word. It goes beyond being a heathen. You're barbaric. You're cruel to take advantage of children this way.
Danger.
Let's see what happens.
Her life could be in danger because of the rhetoric.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Trader Green. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
And he calls her for good measure traitor, which again, he just doesn't understand, John. He just doesn't understand. It's like, we talked to Jonathan Corll, where he'll say you should be arrested 2 times, then he'll go over, talk to him afterwards. Hey, how you doing? And, that's sort of like he's almost like he's playing a game for the cameras. Then he goes off camera, but he doesn't realize when he says that to John Corll.
I think what the American people need to look at is the category of gross negligence versus the category of malice behavior, in being able to identify and separate the two. Because there comes a time to where you can no longer stand under the umbrella of either ignorance towards pleading insanity, or stand under the umbrella of, well, I didn't know no better. Well, if you go before a judge or even a jury, at the end of the day, you can use the defense, well, I didn't know no better, Your Honor. I didn't know no better. And you know what that judge ordinarily is going to say? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So there's no excuse pertaining to the American people that's now being exposed to this, that is not speaking out and is not saying and calling black, black, and white, white, as far as being a straight shooter in this particular incident pertaining to all the victims that has been molested, raped, psychologically, emotionally, and physically abused. And like I said, today, they're going through psychological torment every time they see something like this come up onto the TV, knowing that they was a victim of this particular situation. It's psychological torment. We're allowing for this to happen, folks. And you wonder how come the weather ain't cooperating with us? You wonder how come the forces of nature has turned on the people on the land? Well, quit wondering. Stop wondering.
Of America First resonated with a lot of people legitimately. It might not actually be Trump's motivating ideology, but for a lot of those people, it is. They really believe that you shouldn't spend any time focused on things overseas when you have working class Americans who can't afford their groceries or who can't get good health care coverage.
Jim, there's an affordability crisis, and Donald Trump, Americans have seen Donald Trump across the globe. Now, some of those trips, I've said, very important trips that he had to make, and peace, possible peace in the Middle East. There's some very important things. But Americans see that. They hear about Argentina. They hear about Argentina beef. They hear about these boats, and we're spending how much money blowing up boats, which the New York Times suggesting this weekend that some innocent fishermen were killed in those attacks. Then he's talking about possible invasion of Nigeria. And if you're in Dalton, Georgia, you're sitting there going, what in the holy hell is going on here? This isn't America First.
I just think American people are smarter than politicians give them credit for sometimes, because they realize if you're going to sit back and you're going to rank the topics that matter most, is drug smuggling, if it is happening from Venezuela, making its way to the United States, a top 5 topic? It's probably not a top 1,000 topic. So then they wonder, why the hell are you spending your time there and not trying to figure out why my healthcare premium just went up 15 to 25%, or why my grocery bill is so high, or why our schools continue to underperform compared to our international rivals. And if you look at MAGA, they're very much motivated by that. That is the heart of this dispute that they're having internally. It's stop paying attention to Israel, stop paying attention to Nigeria, stop paying attention to Venezuela, and focus here. And it really ticks them off, especially the Steve Bannons of the world, when every single night the president is either on the phone or dining with tech moguls, or what they call the corporatists. But it's CEOs, it's rich people, it's kind of gilded society, and they hate that because they want them focused on the working class. But that's Trump's comfort food. It's where he likes to be. And I think even these images now, we think nothing sticks, but even these images of gilding the White House or taking these gifts, people might laugh them off, but over time it starts to build and people start to wonder, is the government paying attention to the things that I care about? If the answer is no, you lose elections, you lose popularity, and I think that's what's unfolding in real time. And for the first time, we see an authentically rattled Trump. I don't know that he feels he has that certitude.
And like I said, there comes a time whenever you can no longer stand under the umbrella of ignorance pertaining to plead insanity. Just like there comes a time of pleading the fifth that proof is in the pudding. You can see. And what did Christ say about the tree? What did Jesus say about the tree? Jesus said that you can tell a tree by the fruit that it bears. We're supposed to be fruit inspectors. Regardless whether you're a Christian, regardless whether you're agnostic, regardless whether you're antichrist, regardless whether you don't have no belief at all, Muslim or whatever, we're supposed to be fruit inspectors. And whenever we can no longer judge the difference between good fruit and bad fruit, friends, we got a problem. We got a problem with society. If we cannot call toward being a straight shooter, white is white versus black is black.
Details the UVA president talking about the Justice Department pressure that led to his ouster. We'll have that straight ahead on Morning Joe.
Toxic politics. We will get into this crazy back and forth between her and the president coming up. And good morning, St. Paul, Minnesota. Vikings playoffs hopes slipping away after falling to the Bears in the final seconds yesterday. You're watching Wake Up America right here on Newsmax. We'll be right back.
I'm going to go back to the government shutdown real quick, even though they hadn't discussed it on this particular program. How many times have we heard, seen, been threatened by this government going to possibly shut itself down, or we're going to reduce this, our health care insurance is in danger, our people's Social Security is in danger, or this is in danger, or that's in danger? How many times have we been listening to these I was going to say sad stories, but I'm going to use the word threats. Threats. We've been threatened. And in the meantime, we're seeing where our bridges is falling apart, our infrastructure is not being taken care of. We're seeing where our schools are failing our children. We're seeing where we're steadily going in trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. We're seeing where either they're threatening the American people by cutting off all these entities or shutting down the government. Maybe it's time for somebody to say, you know what? Maybe it's time to reestablish a new government. Maybe it's time to look at this in a different angle regarding the federal government that keeps saying that it's made all these mistakes, but it's not willing to become accountable to the people that allowed for them to ever get in these powerful positions to begin with. And what I'm talking about is going in and confiscating these politicians' bank accounts and putting them out on the streets. I'm just not talking about not voting for them again. I'm talking about holding them accountable for what they have not done pertaining to derelict. Now, if that sounds too strong pertaining to their occupations, well, then maybe it's time for them to consider getting a different occupation rather than get up and lie to the American people and make all these promises that never come true. I think the American people are sick of this. I really do. After being, what is it now, $38 trillion in debt, going backwards still to this day, I think the American people are sick of this, and they realize that they've been bamboozled. They have been bamboozled in so many ways, it's not even funny. And now we're supposed to sit idly by and allow for this government to do whatever this government wants to do pertaining to abuses of forces, and we're not supposed to speak up. We're not supposed to speak out. And if we do speak up and if we do speak out, we get penalized, we get punished, we get put on a spook list or a possible terrorist list because we was too vociferous in our feelings. Now, if that's not leaning towards a communist controlled country, I will kiss your tail and give you 30 minutes to draw up a crowd, because I know that is not the true liberalism pertaining to our democracy that we're supposed to be holding dear, that we claim that we hold dear on a day-to-day basis.
Like their leader, they're doing all manner of bad things. Let's just replace them. Is something that I would hope that the United States of America would have learned over the last 25 years is incredibly dangerous. Nowhere near as easy as it looks. And just about every time we try it, turns out worse. And that's not to say that there aren't bad governments in the world. You know, Maduro is doing a horrible job in Venezuela. He's not the legitimately elected president of Venezuela. But the idea that the U.S. can somehow come in from, 3,000 miles away and just magically fix that problem is something that we should bury as a cornerstone of our foreign policy. Now, Trump, who, by the way, again, ran on saying he wasn't going to drag us into these types of conflicts, is dragging us into this type of conflict. And Bolton is right. There's no clear plan on this. There's no idea around what he's going to do. I mean, most of the time, what they've said is this is about stopping drugs. And now we're talking about this being about wanting us to change the government in Venezuela. There's a lot of assets. That's a lot of risk to not have a clear idea given what the president is trying to accomplish.
We mentioned that President Trump reversed himself on the Epstein file vote. He also reversed himself on some agricultural tariffs over the weekend, announcing that some tariffs will be reduced on products that include, bananas and coffee. I understand coffee is a big deal in Washington State. How do you feel? How do you feel about the reversal on these tariffs?
Look, I mean, this comes back, whether it's Epstein, Venezuela, foreign wars. Trump campaigned, and it seems at this point, basically lying to the American people. Because you remember, one of the cornerstones of his campaign was inflation's too high. I'm going to get it day one, day two, whatever. He was going to come in, he was going to magically fix it. Inflation was going to go away. Everything was going to come down in cost. And then he comes in, he puts tariffs on everything. And you can make an argument about the long-term economic impact of U.S. manufacturing and all of that, which I think is highly debatable. But no one will debate the fact that if you put a tax on imports, that's going to increase costs, which is, of course, exactly what happened. Now, belatedly, Trump is figuring out that he set the house on fire, so maybe he ought to try to put it out. But it's really a major problem in terms of getting after the number one issue in America, and that's the high cost of living. Whether it's food, housing, insurance, healthcare, President Trump has done literally nothing to help. And in most of those areas, he's actually gone the other way. He's getting rid of the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. He's canceling energy projects all across the country, usually as an act of political revenge against Democrats. So all the policies that he's actually implementing are driving up costs. And now belatedly, he's like thinking about maybe I shouldn't do part of one of those. So, okay, that helps, but I hope he understands the bigger picture of what really needs to be done if you're going to get the cost of living under control in this country.
Congressman Adam Smith, thanks for being with us this morning. Sarah?
All right, ahead, his wild stunts are coming to life off screen. YouTube star Mr. Beast has just opened a theme park in a place most Americans have never been. And intense immigration raids now happening in Charlotte, North Carolina. The effect it's having on a bustling shopping area. We'll talk with a business owner taking drastic measures. Next.
You know, I've been drinking coffee, I guess, just about all my adult life. I couldn't stand the stuff whenever I was a kid growing up. But there's lots of stuff that I couldn't stand growing up pertaining to the things that I either drank or ate that today I've saw the requirement of. I rank Folgers coffee, and I'm pretty sure it's probably got 5 or 6 different categories, but I rank it in 3 different categories: small, medium, and large. Last night I was in Union City Walmart in Obion County, Northwest Tennessee, and I glanced over in the coffee department. Not the biggest of Folgers coffee, but the medium-sized one. That before pre-COVID, that same container would cost you between $6 and $8 a container. As of last night, that medium-sized container, not the biggest one, but the medium-sized one, was over $22. Now, if we was paying $1.50 before COVID hit towards going to a restaurant and sitting down and eating a meal and drinking a cup of coffee, can you only imagine what these restaurants pertaining to the hospitality industry is having to do right now? They're probably charging as much as $5, $6, maybe $8 to $10 a cup of coffee with no refills, just to be able to maintain profit pertaining to the hospitality industry. I don't think Donald Trump understands the damages that he's actually doing pertaining to the tariffs that he's putting up onto the world right now. I think basically it's just turned into a Wild Wild West show. And you know who's ultimately going to pay the price? The ones that always pays the price. The consumer. The consumer will be the ones that will pay the price. But now, if there's enough of it to the degree that now it's not just affecting the consumer, but now it's affecting the business people that run the hospitality business, because one day they're going to have to sit down in a restaurant and they're going to have to order, providing that they want that cup of coffee, they're going to have to pay that $6, $8, maybe $10 for that cup of coffee, to where, like I said, at any given day in just about any restaurant, unless you go to a fancy one, you'd pay somewhere between $1, $1.50, $2 for a cup of coffee before COVID hit. Now, there's no doubt people have short memories. There's no doubt that a lot of people only live day to day. They can't see the trees for the forest, per se. But whenever it's as obvious as a knot on a log and what the heck is going on, maybe we need to stop and reflect towards what we have gotten ourselves into pertaining to this presidency that's basically doing whatever it wants to whoever it wants to do it to. And like I said, I'm already on that spook list. the United States government has already marked me and branded me. So they can't brand me no more than what they've already branded me, as far as me being a voice for this person in sharing my opinions, just like whenever I shared my opinion about the Oklahoma bombing, and towards me sharing my opinion about what went on in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas in 1993. Just like the Oklahoma bombing in 1995. They can't brand me any further than what they've already done branded me. So I'm not worried about social discourse. I've already got social discourse. What I'm worried about is my granddaughter. What I'm worried about is your granddaughter, your children, your children's children, other people that didn't have a thing to do with this, that now are going to have to inherit this because we, the people, didn't speak up. Now, they can categorize me and put me on the spook list all they want, pertaining to the incident that happened in my life in Wheeling, West Virginia, going back into 1991. I think it was 91, may have been 90. I get those 2 years mixed up a little bit sometimes. I don't have the paperwork in front of me. But it was in Wheeling, West Virginia, whenever they tried to make me out to be an assassin. My own government trying to make me out to be an assassin. But then a few years later, in the year 2005, my own state government pertaining to this county tried to make me out to be a potential homegrown terrorist by charging me with falsifying files up here in Martin, Tennessee, that the courts in Weakley County supported. The courts in Weakley County supported. So it's not that Mr. Jackson is a terrorist. It's that the court system pertaining to the broken system has tried to make people like Mr. Jackson a terrorist. They have deliberately attacked my character pertaining to the integrity of who I am. And you know what? If they run over me and I don't say nothing about it, I have nobody to blame but myself. But if they run over me or attempt to run over me and I'm sitting there saying, ouch, 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 I'm barking like a dog. Every time you hit that dog, I'm barking. Then guess what? The people in general are supposed to look at both sides and have a fair assessment of what's actually going on. And whenever this starts affecting your pocketbooks, whenever this starts affecting your lifestyle, then, and maybe only then, I'll have some people out there that will listen to what I got to say. As I've said before, it's difficult, not impossible, but difficult to vote the people off the island that are in control of the island or that own the island. But once you get enough evidence upon to these stagnated, corrupted people, hopefully there will be a crop. There will be a sector of people that will come up into the intertwining of the rest of the population that will say, you know what? Maybe this individual's right. Maybe what he's talking about is absolutely correct. Because whenever it starts affecting your life and you still don't speak up, you have no one to blame but yourselves. At least I'm speaking up. At least I'm putting forth effort in trying to share my story in the things that has occurred in my life and trying to prevent these things from happening in other people's lives. That's the sole primary purpose for a person sharing their testimony, other than giving God, the eternal Father, the Creator, the glory and honor, because it was only through and by Him that gave me the strength and gave me the ability to go through the things that I went through to begin with. But the sole purpose for sharing your testimony isn't to glorify yourself. It isn't to seek some sort of emotional favor pertaining to wanting people to feel sorry for you. pertaining to them giving out your empathy or their empathy and sympathy towards the things that you went through, but you share your testimony in response towards possibly helping someone else not to go through the same recourse of that in which what you went through. And if your motives ain't in the right place regarding telling your story, putting your life out there, sharing your testimony, then maybe you need to evaluate the sole purpose for you ever coming public, in public domain to begin with. Because there comes a time to where none of us, no matter who you are, unless you do have some sort of mental illness, but there's going to come a time that none of us is going to be able to stand under the umbrella of pleading insanity or pleading the fifth. You know why we're not going to be able to plead the fifth? Because one day whenever we stand around that big table, sit around that big table, pertaining to the judgment, we won't have to speak out pertaining to the things that we've either done or the things that we should have done that we didn't do, because it's already going to be recorded and written on the wall. Now we can dispute that, but the facts are going to speak for themselves pertaining to our lifestyles and that in which what we're guilty of.
It's stoking fear and dividing our community.
Joining me now is Manuel Manolo Betancourt. He owns the popular Manolo's Bakery there in Charlotte. First, let me ask you, what happened, Manuel, at your bakery or outside your bakery?
This past Saturday, I was walking here on this avenue, and then these unmarked cars just approach. Just four guys jump out from the car and throw pedestrians down to the floor, and all of these people could be customers from my bakery. And then these cars start coming here to my parking lot as well.
We're seeing some of the video taken by a bystander who is showing, the agents running, people falling on the ground, them trying to nab and pick up people. What have you done with Manolo's Bakery? What have you decided to do with your business because of this?
It's the first time in 28 years that we closed the bakery. The only time that we had closed it was a few hours when the founder passed away in 2014. So I decided not to risk my customers, not to risk my employees, and not risk myself and my family. That could be myself, my wife, or my kids who were walking on the streets and they just turned down to the floor like what I saw. So
safety. He's talking about human safety. He's talking about possibly getting involved in a lawsuit because somebody's going to get physically beat up or harmed in his dwelling, that they're going to hold him accountable. So to me, he's being an accountable individual by shutting down his restaurant and making sure that that environment he won't have to be accountable for. Why should we as American citizens have to do that? Regardless whether we got a bakery, regardless whether we were involved in a church, regardless whether we're involved in a school, regardless whether we're involved in other matters. ICE, I've always said that I've got a great deal of respect for them, and I always have and I always will, providing that they're doing things legitimately, providing that they're not going over the line in abuse of force. And I think that's what we're seeing on a day-to-day, everyday basis whenever it comes to this administration going in and cleaning house. And as I said before, if anybody needs to be reprimanded for this, it should be the prior presidencies and those that worked for the prior presidencies that allowed for this to ever get in this type of shape to begin with.
To the CMPD and to the cops here, Saturday they picked 81 people from the street and just like say no, then had like some criminal issues. Why they didn't send the information to our local police enforcement? I think, and I feel this.
Now I'm going to reiterate. There's no doubt whenever you're going up against this type of resistance. Sometimes good people has to do bad things. But whenever you're starting to see it on a day-to-day, everyday occurrences, regardless whether it be in this town or this city or that city. You know, I've been in Charlotte, North Carolina. I worked in Charlotte, North Carolina for a while, working in some body shops over there. I'm very familiar with what goes on in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're very good. North Carolinians are a lot like the Tennesseans. They think very similar to how we think pertaining to protecting ourselves, kind of like the Texas people. The Texas people are 100% toward being able to defend themselves pertaining to their Second Amendment and etc. Laws. But there comes a time where you have to be reasonable about even doing that, towards trying to hit the middle ground, trying to hit a balance. And that's what we're not seeing, that we need to be seeing. And all I can say is good luck to all of us pertaining to what we're not seeing regarding this right here.
Republicans now saying he has nothing to hide. This is a stark reversal, a complete 180 after opposing the full raise for months now. It could be that the president is steering into the skid, with the House Republicans expecting mass defections with that vote finally, when it finally comes to the floor. That's expected to be tomorrow. Of course, releasing the files does not require a vote from Congress. The Department of Justice could do it right now. President Trump could call for it right now. Still, ahead of the House vote, several women who survived Epstein's sexual abuse have joined forces to put out a powerful public service announcement. They're pleading with Congress to put the focus on the victims.
I was 14 years old. I was 16 years old. I was
16.
17. 14 years old. This is me.
This was me.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein. This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
Let's get right to CNN's Elena Treen at the White House this morning. Elena, what's behind this complete reversal?
Well, look, I think, the president is being advised on exactly what this vote this week is going to look like. And he recognizes that this is one of the areas where he's going to lose. This push to try and stop this vote from happening. We first saw that, of course, last week when he was calling up Republicans who were signing the discharge position. He even had one of them to the White House in the Situation Room. But now it's clear where this vote is going. And so I think from the White House side, why not try to own it? But there's a couple key questions and implications to this, John, because one, it does look like, again, this House vote, this is going to move forward and Republicans are going to largely back it. We heard Republican Thomas Massie yesterday, one of the people who has brought this vote forward, saying that he believes 100 or more House Republicans are going to get behind this vote. But the key question is what is going to happen in the Senate, because what we've been hearing now for days has been that the Senate would likely not try to even take this up. The Senate Majority Leader, John.
Now, you keep in mind, it was the media. It was Bill Clinton's presidential administration that lied to the American people pertaining to what went on down at Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, in trying to promote that idiot down there towards him being a pedophile. That was the whole primary purpose that they went in and raided the Branch Davidians. Well, come to find out, it wasn't over pedophilia. There was pedophilia that was going on in that compound. But that was not the main concern towards them going in. The main concern towards them going in was based around monetary tax money. In addition to the way that they set them up in basically teaching them how to manufacture the difference between a automatic rifle versus a semi-automatic rifle, basically turning it into a machine gun, and basically put almost right at or a little over 200 canisters of tear gas in a 6.5 hour period that caused the death of those people. When it comes to the truth, it's hard to disguise it. And the Bible says that the truth will set you free. And right now, what's going on with this Epstein file case it smells to high heavens in what's actually occurring here.
Absolutely losing control, because it's very clear not only that Donald Trump is engaged in a cover-up, but now his party is in the process of trying to decide whether or not to vote to hold him accountable. But I want to be clear, Donald Trump and this case are not going away. The Epstein case spans decades. There are over 1,000 potential victims. The DOJ has vast files, including witness statements.
1,000 victims. You only seen 5 or 6 a while ago. Those women that was standing up showing their pictures of what they looked like when they was 13, 14, 15 years old. Can you only imagine 1,000 victims? 1,000 of those?
1,600 times. I spent the weekend looking at these records in depth. They name multiple cases involving sexual assault, conversations Epstein had that involved the president and his time at his house, and evidence that Donald Trump absolutely knew that Ghislaine Maxwell was recruiting and grooming young women from Mar-a-Lago and bringing them to Epstein's house. So this is not going away for the president. And for any of my colleagues that don't understand what is in these files, open the files, read them for yourselves. This is not only scandalous for the president, these are crimes, and we will continue to investigate and see where it takes us.
The president has not been accused of any crimes or wrongdoing as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein or these files, even with these emails being released. That's one thing that we need to make clear. But
yet,
one thing about...
It's not been charged yet. Yes.
Yeah, there's no accusations, though, of any wrongdoing so far. The Justice Department at this moment does not need a vote to release the files. Pam Bondi had released some of the files that they said they had months ago to great fanfare, especially since the president now says that he wants to see the records released. They could bypass this vote and just release them. Is that your understanding?
Well, first of all, it's important that the president has not said he wants the records released, because we have already subpoenaed the files. What he put on
no, he did overnight. He said House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files. So yes, he now says that.
No, what he said on his Truth Social is that it's okay for Republicans to vote for the discharge petition, because he's already been subpoenaed to release the full unredacted files. That is a congressional subpoena, and he has not complied with it, and he is not actually releasing the files. His Truth Social post says, go ahead, Republicans, vote for this discharge petition that's not going anywhere. That is not the same as saying he is going to release the files.
He did write, just for clarity, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files. He also, in this Truth Social post, says the House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to. I don't care. What are you legally entitled to?
We are legally entitled to the entire full redacted files. That is what the subpoena says, and he has not complied, as I have mentioned. But Donald Trump is parsing words here. He did not say he plans to release the files. He said that Republicans can vote on this House discharge petition because he knows he's going to lose the vote. He was engaged in a months-long cover-up. Mike Johnson shut down the House for 54 days to stop this vote. And now he's saying, oh, I don't have anything to hide, because he understands that this has been a political nightmare for him. And so he is giving permission to vote on one motion, but he is not complying with the subpoena, which is called for the full unredacted files, which includes thousands and thousands of documents and investigations into criminal wrongdoing that were never...
He's promoting himself up, presenting himself as being a scoundrel in the eyes of the people. I hate to say that about our own president, but that's what they're looking at. They're looking at somebody that's just a total out-and-out scoundrel. He'll say one thing, he'll do something totally different. He'll promise one thing and do just the opposite. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Part and the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another.
She is doing something that politicians do not do these days, which is she is saying she is sorry for things she has done in the past. What do you think of that?
I think it's great. I'm glad to see her doing that. I think it's important. I am also proud of her for taking a stand for the survivors here. If anyone has watched what has happened over the last few days and the way in which the president has lashed out and threatened her and called her a traitor for trying to stand to release files to give justice to sexual assault victims, I'm proud of the work that she's done in taking this stand, and I think it's important that, she's owning and taking accountability for.
The truth will set you free. The truth will set you free.
Engaging in toxic politics.
Do you see her now as an ally?
I have a working professional relationship with her because we both serve in leadership roles on the DOJ subcommittee. We have always had a collegial working relationship. While there are some viral moments in which certainly I was gavelled profusely, in which there were rules violations in the committee, we've always had a working professional relationship.
Congresswoman, thank you for your time. Sarah.
All right, ahead. We are cleared for takeoff. The FAA now ending its mandatory flight reductions after hundreds of cancellations per day. How long might it take for things to get back to normal at the airports? And a brand new study this morning showing about a quarter of American women do not get prenatal care in their first trimester. The numbers behind this alarming trend. And jury selection set to begin in the case of an alleged killer accused of dismembering his wife because she wanted a divorce. Those stories and more ahead.
Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors towards which way, not just the American people pertaining to the Christian society, but which way the earth goes pertaining to all these problems that we're now obviously looking at, raising eyebrows to, and identifying and understanding the difference between distorted lies versus the truth. God bless and shalom.